Whoa.
So it's a really, if you haven't seen it, it's a really neat uh, behind the scenes bit on how they did that.
Oh, I will definitely have to check that out. That sounds pretty
So,
cool.
and like I don't know if not everybody saw the movie, but there's a scene where the female character in the movie, she's got this giant computer screen.
Whoa.
So her it's her desk, and it's wraps around up the top, and
This feedback will end in a moment.
Yeah, I'm hearing some feedback.
It's okay. It'll end in just a minute. There's about a 30-second delay, and I had to test the stream here.
Oh, it might be me.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna mute the.
Yeah, you'd want to mute the YouTube.
I think that was.
Right, sorry about that. It had already started streaming, and I posted on our Facebook that we were starting up, but we can start on time regularly, and we'll cut the very beginning.
Are we on?
Another few more minutes. 2 more minutes.
So our pre-show ramble. We're not
Yeah, exactly.
quite slick enough yet to have like a countdown thing or whatever, but we'll get there.
We're not like the epic stream where we have like some cool, guy working for like an hour, and then it'll be the countdown and stuff.
Like two people talking. Yeah, what's Daniel going to ask David? I don't know. You'll have to watch.
So let me just make sure I've got everything ready then. I feel there's a lot of pressure that this all goes well.
Hey,
It's mostly on Marshall. All you gotta do is move your lips.
Oh, perfect.
I hear a cat, Daniel.
Can you actually hear him? Shit. I turned that MV broadcast to cat mode. Well, I'll put myself on mute when I'm not talking. So
We're getting questions if we can see the cat, please.
The cat's not
not
allowed in the room.
This is a quarantine zone right now, so no cats in this room.
Oh.
Hey, Marshall,
They're
we
really
got
mad at me.
a comment on YouTube that only your microphone is only sending left audio.
Well, I'm not the one speaking, so it doesn't matter too much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it though. It is. I can. There's one back here that can send right audio if we need to.
Well, I mean,
Is this better? Can you?
I hear both channels, so it may be his.
It's just my mic. David and everybody else will be fine.
My mic working okay.
Yeah, you're in both ears. Appreciate it though. Oh, it's Ken. Howdy, Ken.
I can start sharing my screen and get going. You think, Marshall?
Yeah.
Hey guys, how's everyone doing today on this beautiful Saturday afternoon? Hope everyone's keeping safe. This is a bunch of short guys meeting for, I guess, September right now. We're still left in. If you've never been here, guys, this is a group for creatives. We're based out of Dallas, and I'm glad everyone can make it out. Thank you to David, Lee, Marshall for doing the editing and putting this whole thing together for us. Just want to say we do have Industry Giants still coming up in the middle of November. We're going to have some more information about that here in a few weeks. Just a couple banners done by our artist Cameron Witt. This is a couple pictures that we had from last year's at Gillies, where we had over 300 attendees, a bunch of our volunteers. You see Ethan over there, a bunch of our board members and speakers. We did some portfolio drawing, had artists, from around the world come out, and show off their stuff. We also did portfolio reviews and just good people coming together. So if you guys want to see more about Industry Giants, just go to our Industry Giants YouTube channel, and you can see some of our past speakers and some of the past little interviews that we did on the side. We will be broadcasting some of this stuff on YouTube here in the next few weeks again. So just keep a lookout for that. With that said, let me stop. I always forget how to stop sharing. There it goes.
Just turn your computer off.
So with that said, want to introduce my co-host today, which is Lee Johnson. Lee and I we went to school together, and he's got an architectural background. So I thought he'd be great just as another support to speak here with David. And then David and we met back at Autodesk University about 5 years ago now, maybe. And
not that long, but yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, man. I guess it was like,
years fly by. I don't know what day of the week it is recently. It's fine.
But no, I'm glad that at the time he was working with Carlson RTKL. Is that correct?
Yep. No, that's not good.
Yeah, and now you've just become a guru over there at Epic Games, working with the AEC clients and everyone. So I'm really glad to have you here. Thank you for being here, David, across from the pond.
Very excited to be here. It's actually my first sort of YouTube live thing, so like this kind of live presenter mode open to anyone. So I'm very nervous.
Really? I thought you just presentations all the time.
Yeah, but they're like small conferences and they're like with a select group of people. But whenever you've got this like public link, which is open to anyone, it could just, it's just a slightly different kettle of fish. I did a webinar once, which was similarly like open to the group. And it is terrifying just watching comments come in while you're presenting. So yeah, it's definitely still something new to me still, but excited.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. Guys, also I want to mention we are going to be watching the chat. So either if you're in Zoom chat or YouTube chat, we will be getting to your questions. So feel free to ask any questions at any time. Okay?
Nice comment.
So with that, Dave, yes.
I'll happily just give an overview. So yes, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I'm very happy to be here and happy to share some of the stuff that's been going on. Quick introduction on sort of backstory to where I've come from. I met Daniel at Autodesk University a good few years ago now. And I've been working in the architecture industry for a good number of years and spent most of those out in the Middle East. Working for a variety of companies, from the conceptual and concept design side all the way through to the construction drawing side. And I kind of started to find a liking to technology and how not only was it able to kind of help us portray our ideas, but it was also a great way of actually building better and smarter spaces. So it kind of we kind of went down this sort of road of exploring the different ways that technology can aid the design process within architecture instead of, just being a tool in the system. So it was interesting. I ended up starting to use Unreal a little bit, which is how obviously me and Daniel met. I think that was my very first project, was one of the sort of big Dubai new world's tallest tower buildings. And we then started going on and we started developing this interesting tool where we were tracking people in VR as ways to monitor spaces. And we'll go over that a little bit more detail, but eventually the Epic Games reached out and they liked obviously some of the work that I was doing and were very interested to see if I was up for helping support their AEC enterprise team. So I'm now part of this great team within Epic Games who get to go around and speak to all these different architectural firms and get to support and help them on some of the amazing ways that they're using real-time rendering tools in the industry. So that's really what I want to share with you today, is some of the great things that we're seeing. I usually sort of like talking about this as the real-time transformation of the AEC, but really it's just, I want to see a bunch of cool stuff. So I'm happy to share some of that stuff, take questions on it if you want to go into it a little bit further. But I've got a lovely deck that I like to share with people. And one of the things I will say, I will make this available for download afterwards, in case people want to view the content beyond just seeing it. Also, I do warn you, there's a lot of video content in here. So if it appears a little bit jittery, I apologize. Not the engine. It is definitely the video stream. So you can see them all in a much higher resolution if you download the asset.
We're seeing your presentation slide right now.
Oh, apologies. My secret notes. Don't cry. Perfect. So, yes, so I'm here today to talk to you about the real-time transformation within the AEC. And how I usually start this is looking at this idea of, what it is that we do within Epic Games, followed by the fun part, which is obviously the use cases. Now, I don't want to sort of bore people with kind of the boring background, but just in case there's anyone who isn't really aware of, what it is we do, is we are Epic Games, yay! And we created this amazing tool called the Unreal Engine. And the Unreal Engine, there's different ways that people see this platform and software. I see it very much as a toolbox, but it's typically used as the engine that created things like Fortnite, Infinity Blade, and Gears of War. And now the tool's also being used and sort of being licensed out other game industry expertise and the non-game side, which is where I belong. And there's a variety of different ways the engine's being used, which we're very excited for, and you can see if there's future opportunity to get these guys to speak to you guys as well. But that very top one is me, the architecture guy. But obviously, we've done a lot of work with film and TV. If you're big fans of The Mandalorian and Star Wars, all the backdrops for that and the big LEDs were done in the Unreal Engine. We work very closely with BMW and a bunch of different automotive industry people, manufacturing, training and simulation. We're everywhere. And we do lots of really interesting stuff, and we speak to a lot of amazing people. The kind of main thing that I see the AEC being used for, and why I see it being sort of really interesting for the Unreal Engine, is the ability of bridging the idea with reality. Because in the architecture industry, it's all about creating a physical asset, a building. And so being able to bridge that concept that you have with reality itself is something which we're quite excited for. And obviously supplying ways that people can work together. So yeah, I don't know how many of you may or may not be aware, but we don't just have the Unreal Engine. There's also this other program called Twinmotion. And if you haven't heard of it, it's fine. I'll give you a quick rundown. Again, this is just high level stuff. I promise it does come back to the tool use cases in a second. Twinmotion is essentially, it was created for very quick architectural visualizations. The idea was the Unreal Engine is a much more complex program with potentially limitless outcomes. But what we wanted to do was to create a simplified wrapper around it, and really focusing on the architectural visuals, in what they often refer to as a few clicks. I love the idea. It's not just one; it's a few. So we're not going to tell you just exactly how many clicks it is, but it's more than one. But it's not that many. The UI is very simplistic, and you can achieve a relatively good visual fidelity with it. And we'll see some of them later on. Whereas what I've started to kind of describe the Unreal Engine as more of is this advanced 3D real-time creation platform. And that's the idea that you can take your architectural visualization models into this engine, you can make them even better, even more photorealistic. You can add functionality into it. You can add literally whatever you want, like buildings popping out of the ground, exploding and spinning as you press buttons, and that everything's possible. And the output of that is very flexible as well. And you can adapt it to VR and AR and all these other great things. And again, not going to spend much time talking about this kind of stuff. It's really just what the engine is there to do, and what the tool set is there to do, some of which I'm sure you guys are more clued up on than me. The idea that we've got this very connected ecosystem. We've recently acquired Quicksilver, and they're now part of the Happy Epic family. And all these high quality materials and assets are now available in both Unreal Engine and Twinmotion. To the point, which is very exciting, which we'll get to closer to the end, which is the idea that people will soon be able to start their project in Twinmotion and then take it across into Unreal. Oh, big developments, very exciting. But the other part is the data aggregation part. So, you guys, the visualization experts out there, know better than anyone that, you know, data sources can come from a variety of different places, and not always optimized to be the sort of best for visualizations. And there's a huge focus for us, especially to try and make that workflow from these proprietary software tools into the Unreal Engine as seamless as possible. You know, from Blender integration to 3D Studio Max and Maya, Revit, SketchUp, Rhino. You know, the importance of creating a non-destructive workflow from those software tools to Unreal. And we know that you guys need that more than anything else. The collaboration side is really fun. That's the ability to basically host multiple users in the space at the same time. And this is something we're seeing a lot more of, and you're going to see some great examples of this, purely because, unfortunately, we're not allowed to be in the same room together at the moment and for the foreseeable future. So that ability to collaborate virtually is something which is really exciting. We're seeing lots of. And then finally, the one which is basically, once you have a 3D asset in this tool, the output can be anything. Today, it might just be a visual still. Tomorrow, it could be a video animation. The week after that, it could be a VR experience. You know, it's flexible to whatever your output is. And that's really just the kind of overarching things that both Twinmotion and Unreal really offer. And now we see the kind of manifestations. This is the part everyone gets excited about, because it's seeing the application in all of these different use cases. Because in the architecture, engineering, construction world, there's this thing called the BIM Life Cycle, which some of you may be very aware of bitterly as well. But it goes all the way from concept design all the way through to the operations and renovations of those physical spaces. And it's not just create a visual asset and then move on. There's so many different uses that we're seeing for the Unreal Engine and Twinmotion in these spaces. And the ones which I want to share a little bit more with you today are around these guys. Which is, you know, things like virtual selling, you know, the great things we're seeing coming out of that. Digital twins are very new and emerging, collaboration, immersive design, visual communication, so many different ones. So there's lots of examples, but I do realize there's a sort of time limit and a time frame here that we're trying to target and aim for. So I will be very conscious of that. But I also want to show you guys enough, because I really want you to pick my brain on this afterwards and ask lots of questions to kind of help sort of answer any questions, because I do realize that sometimes what I do is we show this great content, we show these great capabilities, and people want to then know, well, where can I get started? And how can I start to look into this stuff? Or even hear from people who have started that and want a little bit of advice on where to go next. And I will hopefully be able to answer some of those questions, maybe. But just to kind of quickly swing back on Twinmotion, this is actually, I recently put this into the slide. You know, we added this new family into the ecosystem not that long ago. This idea of, you know, a very quick architectural visualization tool, it's a tongue twister, a very quick architectural visualization tool. And the idea is, you know, the visuals will never be to the same level and fidelity as what the Unreal Engine can grab. But what it does allow people to do is get a very quick snapshot and still allow that kind of creative output using these kind of very simplistic UI tools. This is actually an example. It was a recent competition we held for someone to kind of create a Twinmotion scene and send us a video and an animation. And this guy created this amazing one, which basically is like a jogger simulating running through a park. I've turned off the audio on this one because it's jogger heavy breathing, which can be a little bit ominous on a conference. But it's amazing how in this tool where you're there to create, you know, just a very quick architectural visualization, he's somehow managed to create this kind of feeling of running through a park. And, you know, we were blown away by this, because we're definitely more typical to seeing things like this, which is, you know, being able to view all your assets in this kind of explorable real-time space, you know, being able to control the environment, being able to sort of manipulate materials and add simple things like people walking around and cars driving around, you know, and create these animations sort of very quickly. So these are the more kind of typical things that we start to see in this space. What I really like about Twinmotion as well is, you know, as a way of aiding the architectural visualization process, and with our sort of joint partnership and acquisition of Quicksilver into the Epic family, you know, Twinmotion is preloaded with over 2,500 different assets, everything from vegetation and grass, flowers, trees, to people and cars and helicopters and cows for some reason, all these amazing sort of assets. And what's really interesting is as the ecosystem evolves and we're connecting these ecosystems together, these assets are soon going to be able to be transferred from Twinmotion or accessible in the Unreal Engine as well. And what I also love is, again, in this, it's definitely less architectural unless we're looking forward to the future. But you can even do exploration of sort of conceptual design in here. It's not just for the current as is, standard building. This is a great example of a guy who brought in all these kind of futuristic end of the world stuff, which, really unique and not something I usually talk about at architecture engineering conferences. Here's what your building will look like in 100 years. But it's definitely more on the idea of doing something fun or more of a fun use case. And here is one of our great cat assets that we have. It's one of those great 2,500 assets. The cow one, I think, is more hilarious to just be throwing random cows into scenes. So yes, this kind of real-time ready build, I just wanted to show a couple of examples of that, mostly because, to understand some of the ways that they're being used. And then you obviously get to the visualization quality that the Unreal Engine can provide. And I'm definitely not going to preach to a bunch of animators and visualization experts on the ways the engine can be used, because you guys will know this a lot better than me. But it's just great to be able to share the levels of quality that some people are exploring and being able to achieve using the engine and tools like real-time ray tracing. And the ways that we try and aid this community and try and help this community is, in this example that you're seeing on the screen at the moment, we've put all these assets in this Unreal scene onto the marketplace for people to download so they can interrogate, how we did it, what was the light quality, what were the light settings, what are the assets being used, and allowing people to see how it is we achieved it. And in case you didn't catch it earlier on this week, this was a very recent video that was created by a company called The Mill. It was for Unreal Fest, and what its kind of focus was showing all the different creator uses of the Unreal Engine, from automotive to manufacturing to games to architecture. And this is a clip from their architecture reel. And what's really interesting about this is we held a webinar just that's very Doctor Strange, sort of Inception style approach, but we've actually just finished a webinar which shows a number of those techniques and how to build and work with those animation pipelines to create some of the effects that you saw in that video, like the building being constructed in this kind of ripple tower effect. So we're very keen in supporting training into how to achieve some of these things as well. And these assets, again, available in the marketplace for people to look at. And we're seeing a number of, again, what's really interesting and what I'm finding super interesting about this area of the engine is I actually find myself talking less and less about this as the days go on. And mostly because people are becoming more aware of the level of fidelity that the Unreal Engine can achieve. And they're more interested in what else it can do with it. What's the next thing? We're one of the most powerful, sort of most realistic render engines on the market for real-time rendering. And so people are very fascinated on what to do with it next. How can you go beyond? Which is kind of the purpose of what I wanted to share today. Starting in this is this idea of immersive design. We're seeing more architecture firms, engineering firms, and animators and visualization specialists like yourself wanting a more hands-on approach to the way that you design and see these things in real time. If it's not updating our pipeline from obviously Revit and 3D Studio Max into the engine, it's people creating bi-directional tools like Mindesk into these 3D softwares that allow a bi-directional workflow from these two programs, so you can model in VR and see those effects in Rhino. You can apply materials in either one of these applications and see it instantly in the other tool. And this kind of level of workflow and this kind of quick updating is what we're striving to do outside of this as well. This is what Datasmith is ever heading towards in the future. And it's whether or not it's that or, what we spoke about earlier, this isn't mine. I took it out just because I feel like it was showing off a bit. This is a company called The Parallel who have created a tool again to monitor what they call attention value in spaces. Mine's better a little bit. I'm joking. This one's really interesting because what they do to this is you can monitor what people are doing in VR, and they've linked it into Salesforce, so you can actually see a very clear data map of where people are going, views that they've taken. So you can actually start to get an idea of how people are using the spaces so that they can adapt their spaces and go beyond. You know, this is another one by AF Consultants who have created this tool, and you know, they're very infrastructure focused, but they've loaded in this GIS map, and they're able to sketch new road or railway lines in the space, and it reacts with the GIS sort of topography. And it allows them to draw these spaces in an immersive field with the client, and it then actually build that back into the application. So we're seeing this streamlined way of, you know, working in design and working in real time, getting better and better and better as we move forward. And this is probably one of the best ways which we're seeing the engine being used, is this idea of communicating an idea. And this is especially important within the architecture, engineering, construction community, because, you know, we have these ideas that we want to make very visual, you know, whether or not it's HKS's new Ranger Stadium, that they wanted to animate and share and communicate the way that the roof peels back, that the system and the project works, that they're easily able to show this in real time, and not just show it simply, but load in every single one of their BIM models into this space and allow you to explore to a horrendously good level of detail of all these different spaces. You know, communicating that idea in a very visually high fidelity way is, you know, really important to a lot of people within the industry, all the way to the kind of work that AccuCities are doing, where they've created this kind of almost digital twin of London, where they've preloaded it with data that you can analyze and see city data, you know, from a variety of different ways. You can explore new developments that are going on and how your project will then fit into this. You know, you can do this cool thing where you can put your asset next to a live photograph and see the kind of live implications of it, you know, CCTV footage. But the best thing about this tool is being able to load your own model and massing into it and run these diagnostic tests on how the model will react in that space, you know, where your building is visible from. You know, and all of these sort of tools are available that they give with their subscription in the Unreal Engine. So it's really exciting to see the different ways they're communicating. All the way to this great leasing tool by Cityscape, who have developed it to allow leasing agents to speak to their future tenants a little bit easier, allowing them to draw out future new leasing spaces in buildings that link to a live financial model. So you can explore the space in the one-to-one and draw this out and see the costs of it, and update that in real time. So it's again a way of bridging that ability from, you know, from an idea and a discussion of what could be a, you know, a very sort of spreadsheet-based conversation into a very real-time conversation. You know, in this example, you see that we're drawing out a new floor plan. You know, how much does that cost? Great. Can we see this space? Of course you can. Here it is here. And here's the view you can see from the window. So yes, lots of cool things that we're seeing in there. I'm going to move on just because I realize I get caught a little bit in rambling, but this is a really interesting one. And it's really, it's come into its own since obviously lockdown and the fact that we can't travel, is the idea of virtual collaboration. You know, the ability to be in a space with someone and bring in multiple users that you can then explore this space or explore these different ideas. Now we have an Unreal template called the multi-user template, which automatically has a lot of this functionality built in. And what we're seeing is companies like Thea, companies like Spaceform, who are taking that and going the next level with it. You know, allowing you to annotate and sketch and bring in different mediums and being able to talk about them in different ways. And it's really interesting to see the adoption of these different technologies and the different ways that people are using this technology. And this is Squint Opera's version of it, which, you know, very similar, but, you know, just different mediums that they want this client engagement space, but virtually. They want someone to feel that they're still able to express ideas and communicate an idea, but not by sending them something, by them being there with you in the space, which is, it's very, very exciting the way that they're sort of going with this. I honestly love these guys' sort of approach to the kind of slideshow presentation. interactive table, very sci-fi film-esque, and I also love the floating headsets, which is also very creepy, but great at the same time for giving presence in a space. And the next tool, which usually opens up for a lot of good discussion at the end, is this idea that we're not limited in how we share content anymore. This example is brought to you by a tool that we sort of made available in the engine called Pixel Streaming, where you can now share your Unreal experiences over the web browser, and host it to a variety of different people. So you're now not limited to send it to someone who has to have a high-end gaming PC. You're not limited to send it to someone who has an iPhone or an iPad and watch the quality drop. As long as you have internet connection, you can host these models on AWS or Azure, send it to these devices so they can view all the functionality of the Unreal experience, but on a web browser. And this example is from a company called PureWeb, who, if you don't want to do all the background programming and instancing yourself, they'll take care of all the back end and you focus purely on the great architectural visualization side. But yeah, this is a huge space of interest and a lot of where people are going in this space. Moving on to, and there's other examples there, but they're very similar collaboration, which we can touch on a little bit later on if the questions come up, is probably what might be most interesting to you guys is the different ways people are expressing and using these tools and pushing the boundaries. And there's great examples here of people, looking at cross-vertical kind of collaboration, so integrating both virtual production and real estate. Now, who would have thought that would happen? In this example, Ada's Homes have loaded their entire real estate assets into Unreal Engine, but the person you're seeing on the screen isn't a pre-recording. It's a live feed to their offices where the agent is able to engage with you on a call and walk you through the virtual asset. So you can ask, does that couch come in a mahogany green? And they'll go, yes, it does, or no, it doesn't. So it's allowing this live sort of integration and this idea of virtual production meets architecture, which makes me very excited because I love the virtual production side. And then you see people doing these really crazy things of mixing virtual and physical interactions. This is a 3D printed model, a white 3D printed model where they've used 12 laser projectors to project on the image and the model coming from the Unreal Engine. That allows a large group of people, we're not allowed to any more than 6 at the moment, but a large group of people to view this asset and explore the scene. The screens you're seeing in the background are coming live from the engine and able to share different sort of information assets from this urban master plan with people in a much more engaging way. It may be the closest to holograms that I've ever seen, where it's actually a 3D asset, but with this amazing sort of interchanging face and skin to it, which is awesome to see. The other one, which I usually like sharing from this place, is a company called OmniPlanet, who have created this, again, real estate asset tool where they've got this blank room, put LED windows in, and allows people to view what their apartment views will look like from different floors in the building. So you can select, what does it look like from this view, or from this side of the building, or from down here? I see a car park, that's no good. I want to see the Hudson Bay, or I want to see the Turner Seascape, or whatever. It's a really interesting way of actually, pushing the bounds on how you connect with people in this way. And, what I also love to see is the way that quality is advancing as well. In the way that we see, this is AR. AR technology in the past has been very static, sort of single color model. We're now starting to see the visual fidelity of Unreal being able to be reflected in AR. So this is on an iPad that you can put in place using, a variety of mix of different, the technology advancing. You now use Azure spatial anchors to be able to view this in context as you walk around it. So that's virtual selling, and very exciting. This is probably my favorite, my personal, and mostly because it's something I was really interested in the architecture engineering community of, looking at ways of monitoring physical assets in a digital world. So if you're not familiar with digital twins or what they are, it's this idea that I have a house, or I have a building, or I have some form of built assets, in physical space that has sensors in it, and those sensors are collecting information. And what you're able to do is link those sensors into the 3D model and build an experience in Unreal that's customizable around viewing that. And we're seeing such developments. This is a company called 51 World who are pioneers in digital twins. This is a physical built building in China that they've linked up to a bunch of IoT sensors, and they've built this UI around that allows them to interrogate that sensor data and view it in a variety of different ways. And this is real-time data that's coming from the building, temperature, movement, the built assets, like how mechanical equipment is running in this space. It's creating this interface between and visual assets between physical parts of the building, but managing it in a digital sense. This one I usually like to share with people because it's got a lovely sort of backstory to it. It's by a company called Tencent Penrose, who build digital twins purely around the hospital networks, in the healthcare industry. And they've built this digital twin and this model, which is huge, of Shanghai, that allows you to be able to see all the different hospitals within Shanghai and actually be able to see the occupancy of what rooms are available and being used in these hospitals, which ones are free, which ones are taken, allowing them to make smarter decisions and better allocate city resources around the information which is coming from that digital twin. It's an amazingly interesting way of exploring a physical asset and gaining a lot of insight from it as well. And just to kind of show the different ways that, we're using this, here's an example from Cognite, where they built a digital twin, not of a building, but of their assets at the bottom of an ocean. So these sensors are being fed into their database. The IoT information from these assets, that's an actual a photo scanned sort of 3D asset of what that thing looks like at the bottom of the ocean. And they're able to see and translate that IoT information, even from the bottom of the ocean, in real time in Unreal. All the way up to actually seeing how the boat is operating. And you can fly around this at 60 frames per second, and you can see and sort of go and explore the model at any time. And it's such an interesting way of doing it. And the engine's capability of speaking to these IoT hubs, these information assets, it's one of these emerging things. The one that I was working on the other day actually was, I wanted to have a building that linked to an open weather API. So whenever you look at that building, it's showing the actual weather from this and the time of day from where that building is. It's just a great little sort of exploration project which I undertook, and it's coming along great. The last one before I'll stop talking, and I'm happy to definitely open up to questions, is exploring this idea of open worlds. And this is something which we can touch on a little bit just at the end, which is becoming more prevalent. And you might have heard this terminology of open worlds we mentioned in our Unreal Engine 5 trailer. Oh, spoilers. But the idea of it is what we're seeing. And with the tools that are available in the engine, we're seeing people being able to create larger and larger spaces. This is the entire city of Osaka, created by a company called CAD Center. And what's really interesting about this is this was comprised off of GIS data and 3D geometry that they built of the city. Now, this is a really interesting conversation I get into a lot about, optimization and frames per second. What we say is, this was for, they wanted to create a 4K video in Unreal Engine. And what they were able to do is, because they're rendering frames and they're not wanting it in real time, they don't want it for VR, they just want it for a video animation. Optimization was much less important to them. Now we'll see other ones which are running much faster, but for this one, they were able to render out 4K frames every 3 seconds. Now, if you've used the more non-real-time approach of things like V-Ray and trying to render out a 4K frame, we're not talking seconds, we're talking sometimes minutes. And long ago, we may have even been talking hours. So the ability to bring in those large data sets and get a 4K frame every second is just an amazing step forward. All the way up to, and that one was I think last year. We're constantly getting updated with new examples and new things people are sending me. This was sent, I think about 2 months ago, by a company called Build Media. So this is a digital model, a digital replica, verging on digital twin, we'll get to that in a minute, of Wellington, New Zealand. This is the entire city of Wellington in New Zealand, but not just that, the entire country of New Zealand also loaded into the engine. And their data pipeline for this was phenomenal. It's the best I've seen of combining GIS data with photo scans of the city and a mix of BIM information into this pipeline which they're able to bring in. And that wasn't a video animation. This is it in the engine, in real time, running at 50 frames per second. This is how you're able to interrogate and see and fly around this city. And what's really interesting is back to what we were speaking about earlier on of, this one tool, many experiences, for one day it was used just to kind of for a visualization or for an animation. They're now working with Wellington City Council looking at integrating IoT information into that model so that they can actually have a functioning digital twin of Wellington and what could very be in the future, a digital twin of New Zealand itself. And it's just amazing to see people are going into these kind of open world capabilities. The last one, which also I love, is of AF Consultants, who built this 100-kilometer stretch of the largest Swedish railway, currently being, I think either it's being built at the moment or it's about to get started. And they used a number of Unreal Engine tools in here to be able to have this real-time rendered experience to be able to share with the client that they used a bunch of optimization tools like world composition aspects like level streaming, but it was this way of being able to share content at a very high frame rate. But what we're seeing going forward in the future, I realized we're on 30 minutes and I said I would only go a little bit over 30 minutes. So I promise I'll wrap up in a minute. But what I've seen and what we're seeing is this ability of actually, instead of preloading assets, if any of you caught I'm sure we all caught the Esri sort of summit earlier on this year, which was great. But it's this idea that you're now able to stream in ArcGIS database from Esri into the Unreal Engine in real time. So this isn't you preload models of the world and models of cities into the engine for you to be able to explore. This is streaming information and data into the Unreal Engine. And what you're then able to do with that information is add more kind of real-time elements. Like in this one of the Australia bushfires at the start of the year, we got the data and the model from the ArcGIS database streamed into the engine via the internet, but we added the Niagara pixels, Niagara sort of pixels into it to be able to simulate the fire and the smoke. And so it's this ability that we're now not looking at, just bringing in large models. We're able to stream models in, which we're really excited about. And the last one, before we kind of jump out of this and into the kind of summary and then open to questions, which we're really excited about, is LiDAR point scanning. Now, this is, again, it's an emerging thing we're seeing more and more of. This may surprise you, is not meshes. This is actually point cloud scan. 15 billion of them running in real time in the engine at a 0.5 millimeter point density, which gives the impression that it's a solid object. But actually, if you zoom in and look real close, you'll see it's just a series of dots. But what we're starting to optimize the engine for is the ability to take in these huge LiDAR point cloud scans and be able to explore them, again, at a high frame rate, be able to interrogate them and see them and share them with people on the opposite side. And these are just some of the great things that we're seeing come to us from the AEC. LiDAR point clouds are very important to the architecture industry, as are photogrammetry scans, open world capabilities. And we're really excited about how this is being pushed and how this is being developed. There is one more, but we don't have to really talk about that too much. It's the idea of digital training. And it's just people using it for training simulation, but we'll blow on from that. And really just kind of summarize and come down on this side of what this connected ecosystem, what we're excited about, and we're hoping that architectural visualization specialists and people who are helping us out in the industry to create these amazing different outputs is the collaboration, which is, I think we're currently in our beta at the moment, of being able to take a twin motion model with all its flashy sort of assets and bring that into the Unreal asset to add that functionality. So hopefully soon, what you guys might see is the ability, that you'll work with architecture firms, you might work with some engineering firms who will send you, a relatively not awful architectural visualization sort of base to work off of, that you're then able to pick up and advance and take to the next level. But we're really excited at seeing this kind of split of, people that we can see using Twinmotion, the architects, the engineers and their workflow, at the start of a project, that's white massing models and, if we change this material at the time of day, that's what that looks like. And then at the end of that, being able to take it and give it to someone else so they can create one of these visual communication tools, one of these digital twins, one of these amazing kind of open world capability models, so it can be shared with the client in new and exciting ways. And that's really where we're excited about taking this, and it's where we're excited about seeing people take the technology. I'm not here to tell people how to do it. I'm here to sort of help, support and sort of share some of the great ways that they're doing it, and share how they've done it, so that we can all move forward to these amazing, great things. And yeah, that's really the kind of high level everything I wanted to share with you today. Obviously about sort of maybe opening up to sort of the potential Unreal Engine 5 is coming up, which, people always come to me and start asking, what we're going to see, or when we can get our hands on it. From all the things which you saw in the kind of opening video are all the things which we're working on and developing, and there's not too much more beyond that which we can share, because we're currently working on. What I find really interesting, especially from the architecture, engineering, construction industry, was what the Unreal Engine is very game focused, and so whenever we announced the Unreal Engine 5 trailer, we were, all the gaming people were like, that's great, we can't wait to see it, understanding that games usually show trailers of stuff a year or so before they come out, and everyone else is like, oh god, that looks great, can I get a hold of it tomorrow, can I start trying it now? It's coming, it's coming, and we're working on it, and the capabilities, what we saw with Lumen and Nanite and open worlds and all these capabilities are coming, and all the kind of integration from UE4 is seamlessly going to be integrating in with Unreal Engine 5. So yeah, we're really excited about the future of what can be done within the Unreal Engine. So I'm going to stop talking now, and yeah, open it up to questions.
One of the things I love about Unreal is that they're so open on what they're working on and things that are coming out. So I'm glad you brought up the point of the Unreal Engine 5, that, they weren't just hiding it, and they showed a lot, for them saying, oh, well, this is still a year, 2 years, X, number of years away.
Yeah.
It's really nice. And especially like if people want to see more of this, like I know my boss, he, goes on Twitter and follows like Ryan Birch and a bunch of other Unreal developers, and sees like the new phone, stuff that's coming out. And some of it, Unreal allows it, like they just released the Unreal 4.26 preview 1.
Indeed, yep, came out yesterday, was it, or the day before?
Something, yeah, the last 2 days. And I was like, oh, this is great that I get to talk to you. And, if I got questions about that, the day after. There's I haven't either. But I was excited that the chaos system had opened up in there, because we've been wanting to like, oh, well, we'll do these really cool visualizations, but then if we got an extra 5 minutes with you, why don't you take out the little, shooter, part of it, and let's blow up that building. Let's just have some fun. But I love that Unreal's got, all these different pipes that they're basically communicating to the developers, to the people that are using the tools, that we can plan, we can test, we can start seeing what's coming out. We can, project our, next projects out. Like, well, in 3 months, we can do this with this, asset, or start looking into that today instead of just waiting and then have that development time. So I really love that.
I'm glad you appreciate it. I mean, this is something which, it's a big thing which we do within the different sort of industry sort of verticals, even within the architecture, engineering, construction, I use the engine very heavily, and I was really into it, but it wasn't until I started engaging with the team that I started seeing all these different potentials that I had no idea about, and I think it's this open forum, an open way of sort of sharing the great things that are being done, not just by others, but even ourselves, that we want to spark innovation. We want to see people pushing the boundaries on what's possible, trying new things, the Epic Mega Grants is supportive of just that, the Mega Grants, if you don't know, it was this fund we put together of $100 million to kind of give to developers to run, new innovations within any of the industries using the engine. So you can put a proposal together and say, I'm looking for $100,000, I'm looking for $25,000 to try doing this, and you put it in and we assess it, and, we grant money to people to push the boundaries and share, what it is they're actually working on. And so we're really big on this, and, hope that people are going to continue to push the boundaries and challenge us. And we're very excited about the future. I hope you've all signed up for the mega grant, or at least put in proposals. If not today, later.
Yeah, but I just put. I just want to, sit with Unreal in front of my screen for next 48 hours. Lee, you got any questions from the chat or anything right now?
Yeah, we've got a couple of. First off, I'd like to say, David, thank you. That was a really, really stunning presentation. It's funny because I remember going to Game Developers Conference back in like 2004 and speaking with guys from Unreal or from Epic, guys from Unity, and we were trying to talk more about bringing architectural presentations into real time.
Yeah.
And at that point, the game developers mentality was, well, you can license the engine for $500,000. And that was pretty much it. And we just kind of said, okay, well, thanks, but that's more than our annual budget. Maybe even twice our annual budget. So, and that's per project licensing. So it's like, okay, that's just not going to work. So it's really exciting to watch the progression of the availability of these tools to the architectural community. And it's really fantastic. I've got a couple of friends that are that have switched 100% from making presentations in V-Ray, and waiting days and days and days, or even weeks and weeks and weeks to render things out on their small local farm, to move over to Twinmotion and just pop it out in an afternoon.
Yeah.
So it's really great to see, and I've got some clients that are very excited about the possibility of designing. This client does industrial kitchens, McDonald's, Burger King, things like that. And they're very excited about the possibility of being able to, in real time, change out equipment and see and test kitchen layouts. So,
they're doing good work from McDonald's. I appreciate that work. That's amazing. It's really interesting. Because we're very pro sort of helping developers out and very supportive. We made the Unreal Engine free. People can use it and create outputs with it. And even with what they announced earlier on this year, that if you're a game company making a game with the engine, unless you make over $1 million with it, we don't want any money from you. That should be yours. And even sort of these companies that you see that are creating these outputs, we don't want anything from them. We want them to be successful. We want them to use the engine and enjoy it, and obviously get that content out and then push the boundaries on. And the only way to do that is to create this very sort of open community and create these open source tools that people can, it's the idea. One of the guys I spoke to earlier this week, one of the technical guys in the team, he described Unreal as being a toolbox. That honestly, he is yet to come up with an idea that you could try and building in the engine that he's not been able to do. That it just requires a certain level of expertise or knowledge to be able to do it, but it's there and just waiting for people to do it. And I think that's awesome, especially for creative types.
It really is. So I'm going to relay a pair of questions that have come up through YouTube. The first goes back to when you were talking about, I think you said something like on the order of 250,000 game-ready assets inside of Twinmotion.
Oh God, 2,500.
2,500. Okay, sorry.
In Twinmotion.
Twinmotion, yeah. So the question
seems a little less impressive now.
Yeah. Sorry, it's my fault. It's my fault. So the question was, these assets are real-time game-ready optimized. And I think the question was asking if they can be brought from Twinmotion over to the Unreal Engine.
Yeah.
But
so
sure.
No, that's a great question, because this is something which it's not at the moment. It is something which is coming up in the pipeline very soon. First of all, what we'll be doing is all the assets that you see in Twinmotion, the 2,500, are being made available in the Unreal Marketplace. So yes, for free, you can have them, and they're all obviously game ready, LOD built in, so they'll be able to obviously then be used in the Unreal Engine. What we're currently working on at the moment is obviously this Twinmotion and Unreal sort of development tool where, it'll just naturally take those assets in the future. But there's no time frame for that or timeline for that. There's a lot of complexities in doing that. So I think the first step in that process was make the assets available. So you can sort of bring them across. But going forward, we'll see it a lot more streamlined.
I thought I'd just share something real fast. If you're looking for assets in the Unreal Marketplace, a little example that this is my monthly. My goodness. Unreal gives away free assets every month, and this is just a snippet of the stuff that I just have at the ready. Obviously there's the Quicksilver Megascan stuff, but modular building sets. So even if you can't find it in Twinmotions, and you just want to work in Unreal, you have all of that, available to yourself.
Daniel, have you looked at the Quicksilver Bridge tool yet?
Yes, and I love it. I love it. It's become my new asset browser because it puts everything into a nice little folder. It creates tags. So even if it's Quicksilver related or just my own little pre-made, let's say bike, I just throw it into the Quicksilver folder there, and then now the Quicksilver Bridge reads it out to all the different types of DCCs that I have, which would be like 3D Max, Maya, or Unreal. Because one point I was going to make is that, and that you've made, is that as we've seen, if you're in an Unreal, you can go and use this, for film. You can use it for virtual twins. When we started making the step to real time, we were like, we'll make real-time animations. We'll make our animations faster. Oh, okay. Well, now we can make this into, a walkthrough, or now we can make this into a simulation project, or now we can make it into a streaming pixel project. Usually now it's more the question okay, we get the buy-in from a client. Okay, we want you to build this asset, this city, this, intersection. Now, basically it's now how far do we not take it? Because, we're going to build some of this in 3D Max, and maybe we just need a still, so maybe we'll keep it in V-Ray, but then it's easily ported over to Unreal, where now we can make an animation. I was doing a talk, a month ago where we were said on one of our projects, it was going to be a pre-made animation, and then 2 weeks into the project, they were like, "Well, can you make it into VR?" I'm like, "Sure, we can make it into VR." So we made it in VR, and then they were like, "Can you make it a night scene?" Okay, well, but 2 days later, it's a night scene. We just, the hardest part was making some emissive materials, that we hadn't planned on. And then 2 weeks after that, they had asked, well, we're going to make a new commercial out of this, and we want to put your, animation or your assets into the commercial. So how can we make that work? And I'm like, well, it's all right there. So, it's just basically making cameras, and, scripting, different little, people or things that you want to see in that commercial. But it's all right there. And it has all these different ways to be used. And that's really the exciting part for us.
No, that's all. It's, clients sound like all clients I know. It's like, oh, could we just change this one thing? You're like, yeah. And it was a couple of years ago, whenever I started seeing real-time rendering coming in more and more, that there was some sort of visualization companies that started using it. And I was looking at the outputs going, that's definitely Unreal. Anyway, it was a case of, we asked for a couple of renders and they gave us a couple of renders. Then we're like, can we get a quick video animation? They're like, well, I don't know. We'll have to see what we can do. And I'm like, I know you can do it really quickly now. There's no hiding. So it's just this idea that, they're now changing. So the way that we're seeing these studios working is there's a larger upfront build cost. Which then can become a variety of different things, rather than sort of the cost is for what the output is, the cost is for building it, and then there's a lot of sort of minor alterations to the sort of model as you change the experience. But yeah, it's really interesting.
Hey,
I love how it's changed.
Hey, David, we do have one of our former industry giant speakers and a longtime short guy, Alan Chan, has joined Zoom. And we just recently made a list of all of our previous speakers. And you're one of our first few industry giant speakers, but he has an interesting project that he wants to talk about. Ask you some questions for it.
Yeah, so actually, it's probably a really technical question. Maybe I should ask you later, but
embarrass me online. It's fine.
okay.
Do it. Let's do it.
So what I've done over the last couple of years is use Unreal to build a simulation of Mars. Like I'm basically taking satellite data from Mars and I'm creating a world map out of it that I can drive a little rover around and explore. So my next thing I'd love to do is to build the entire planet of Mars. But I want to do it physically accurately. So my question is, can I build a planet that is 4,200 miles in diameter and map it with like a 40K by 40K map and have it stream? You know, that sort of
just that, is it? Just the entire planet on Mars. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like, you know, I was watching that architecture stuff you were doing. It looked like you were able to do something like that. So that's the sort of stuff I'd be interested in.
Right?
So I'll give you a kind of so yes, first of all, the idea of open worlds is definitely the idea of that you can have sort of limitless size of global planets. And weirdly enough, I think it was not that long ago actually, and maybe it was missed. We had one of our solution architect guys, I think Shord, he released a video on creating planets, so planet-sized assets in the engine. Which kind of, now the difference is I think yours looks at bringing in, so obviously satellite data to create them instead, but there was a heavy focus on a larger scale planet size composition within the engine. So yes, you're looking at a lot of different assets and parts coming together there. One of them is obviously creating this kind of spherical planet. Which is, you know, whenever we work and stuff, it's usually on this flat basis, is that it was then to convert that into sort of something that starts to read as a kind of geometric shape. Yes. And then there's the idea that you obviously have these scans that you want to convert in some way. Now, whether or not you want to convert that into Unreal terrain or whether or not you want it to be photogrammetry or if it has sort of topography data in it, that's another thing. But I would start off by looking at that, and definitely I would love to engage you with some of our tech guys on that, because that sounds amazing. I actually thought first you were going to say, and our next step is we want to visit Mars. Can you help us?
So it does run in VR. The whole
fantastic.
The whole point is I am a space nut, and I built this because I wanted to go explore Mars. And since I can't like physically go and do that, you know, it is built so that I could just put that thing on and drive in VR. I'll send some links in the chat. I don't want to take over this presentation, but there are, you know, some stuff. But yeah, so my next step is I do want to build an entire freaking planet with actual data.
I'm very happy, and I will make sure that we at least chat after this. Like I say, there's a great video online which kind of starts to look at planet creation and sort of how you deal with these assets. I think I would be better to understand your pipeline more, but let's catch up afterwards. But it's exactly the type of thing that we're looking to support, and we're starting to see more of, and we're looking to support in Unreal Engine 5. So great.
Awesome.
David, I had one more question for you from the YouTube chat. Going back to the interactive model of London and the overlaid analytics, the question was if those analytics were made through Twinmotion or through a third-party app of some kind. So
the visualizations of the data. Oh, that was all made in Unreal Engine. The visual, so the way that these things usually work is the Unreal Engine can do a number of different things depending on the data sources they're coming from. There's the idea that you can translate and convert static data. Now, the format that data usually comes in, especially whenever we look at that type of data, is it comes in the format of either a CSV or text-based file with a number of sort of different variables in it. So if it's static like that, you know, you use data tables and then a sequencer to basically define each of the different variables, what they are, and then start to attribute them to different things like color, shape, size. So I think on the height map one, the translation of that, I don't know how they personally did it myself, but I know that if I had that same challenge, this is how I would do it. Is I know it was all built in the engine because you can sign up for a subscription with AccuCities, and they give you the Unreal files with all the stuff in it, which you can interrogate yourself. Or the idea is that you have this static data and these sort of different data means, and you translate that into, okay, height of this area is here. That is your height restriction. And then you create a cube which goes up to that point in the data point. And then the cube next to it as a positioning of Y, and then the height of that is next to it. So all of these different ways to visualize data. This is where the kind of the tool set of Unreal really comes in, is that at the moment, there's not very many sort of simple click, create this visualization out of this data set. I know there's some templates on the marketplace. I know there's some great people who are working on these kind of 3D graphs of data. But the whole point is depending on where the data is coming from and the format it's in, you just need to translate and expose it in blueprints. So that's not a Twinmotion asset. That is a complete Unreal Engine asset. And in their instance of obviously CCTV cameras and live data, like in the digital twins, it's a very similar process. You have a temperature sensor in a room. You need to take that sensor and expose it as a text file. It gives the current time, the current temperature. You expose that in the blueprints and say, if it's 32 degrees, it's a red cube. If it's 18 degrees, it's a blue cube. And then just watch it update in real time. So yeah, there's different work processes around that. There are some great tutorials on this as well, which again, I can share in the chat afterwards. So just to kind of help you understand, data translation and visualization in the engine.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Not at all. It's a really exciting space, and that's kind of what digital twins are really focused on at the moment, is both static and live data integrations from, and you can even test this out in your house. If you have like a little Raspberry Pi, you can set it up to kind of read one of many things and then hook that up to Unreal Engine and then have your very own little mini digital twin, which represents the real time of day. It's cool.
Hey, David, I wanted to ask, so what's the newest developments that you've seen over the last few months with collaboration, when it comes to in respect to Corona? So I think that's really important. Questions I'm getting asked, obviously, a lot.
So this area, there was interest in it before because, the architecture, engineering, construction industry is, the world's gone a lot smaller and global projects are now a very common thing. So there were a lot of people exploring it prior to COVID. Whenever COVID started kicking off, people started looking at it a lot more. And I think on the different levels, you have, first of all, people who want the ability to share content. So just content with clients. And that's, the easiest and quickest way of, setting that up is looking into something within the engine called pixel streaming. And what pixel streaming looks to do is you can run your computer, and you don't need to buy an Amazon server, you don't need to buy an NVIDIA server somewhere. You can do it very quickly just as a test, with your computer running, and then send it to a mobile phone somewhere else. That's very simple. Whenever what we're starting to see more is that people wanting more and more capabilities from this. So I want it to run for 24 hours, and I want it to be accessible by 500 people, and I want it to be able to mimic this or be part of this. And so we're seeing the sort of next level of that is where you start looking at using one of these great sort of providers like Amazon or Microsoft Azure, where they give you server space that links up where so you can drop your model into, and a web link where you then scale that up and you size it up. What time do you want that to be live? How many people do you want to be in that space? And the thing about that is there's an inherent cost behind it, the cost of how much the server costs to run per minute, per user. And the one thing, I will say is, from seeing the kind of price range and the availability of that tech software prior to COVID versus what we're seeing it do now is just dropping horrendously. The price is so much cheaper than what it used to be. It's opening up the ability to let it happen. And allowing that kind of to be explored by users. So we're seeing a lot of that, of just that ability to share the content. And then the multi-collaboration, multi-user side, this is where we're seeing people build businesses around, this idea of taking the Unreal multi-user template and building on top of it, creating functionality, hosting mini events. And we actually, a big shout out because there was a guy from Populous who created his own, it's an architectural office who they created an internal concert for all their for employees to attend. It was basic, but it was honestly phenomenal. He created it so everyone could come into the space, have avatars, pick up beers. He used Sequencer to create all these animations. The guy, he just did amazingly well in working that out. And yeah, it was great to see how people are using these collaboration tools and means to share stuff and with everyone. And that was just done with the multi-collab template using internal servers at his company. It was phenomenal. The guy's an absolute genius.
And I'm guessing that was going through different servers, like they were in different locations, not just in one
So
building.
this is what's great whenever you work internally with architecture firms. So if you work in an architecture firm that's global, chances are you'll have global servers that are accessible all the way around the company. So you don't need to invest in the AWS, you don't need to invest in the Microsoft Azure servers because you've already got your own one. So he hosted it on that. You know, it was just his own internal architecture server. We put the instance on there. And then anyone who was logged in through their virtual machines into the server to get it, to then view it from their virtual machines to see this virtual event. It was mad how people are doing this. But it was great. It was so unique an experience to be able to see, all the way to obviously the professionals are doing it. Burning Man was done virtually this year using Unreal. And there's a conference coming up called the WDBE, which is a virtual conference as well, which is doing both virtual post-production and architecture. It's great. I'm loving seeing the different use cases.
So David, I'm going to write a bot to attend these virtual conferences on my virtual machine. So.
I think honestly, it's getting so complex with, we're going to start to see like these avatars, we want to see you in this space at 9 a.m. and you're like, all right. And then you just set up a wee bot to pretend to be you to sign into class and you're like, good one. So yeah, I'm sure all this stuff will evolve. Virtual classrooms, it's like, is everyone here? And you just have a little fake bot who goes here. And you're like, good to see. So yeah, it's great seeing the different use cases, and we're excited to see how people are pushing the boundary on this as well.
I wonder if that's going to improve latency, having from the Unreal Engine versus something like a Zoom, or where you have to worry about, like, if you want to show an animation, especially if you're doing presentations. We show animations in like Zoom here, and you're going to either have latency or you're going to have skipping frames. Do you find that coming through the GPUs a little faster in that regard?
So what we actually find is it's usually very little down to the GPU and usually down to internet connection. Because at the point of pixel streaming, what you're essentially doing is, as long as it's placed in a server that has the graphical power to handle it, which, if you look at, you can get servers now with Amazon, the T4s I think are ray trace capable, and where you can have sort of ray trace servers. Then it just completely comes to making sure that your internet connection is good enough to be able to stream that. I'm trying to see if I have any cool examples or active examples that aren't turned off over the weekend. I can quickly just share, the ability to stream these things and the kind of quality it comes in at. Our examples that we use usually turn off over the weekends just because we're not talking to people over the weekend. So it's definitely not hugely active. I think we'll try the Pure Web one, actually. This is always an exciting one. Let me quickly.
Oh yeah, that was it.
Yeah, let me quickly, if I can figure out how to share my screen. There we are. So I think you're seeing my. Yep. You're seeing the Google web browser now, yes?
Yes.
So, we're obviously streaming this Zoom call, but yet we're still able to, there's audio in this, by the way, so apologies in advance. But you're able to walk around this, it's rendering and keeping the frames up to date. We're not seeing much pixelation, depending on the complexity of your scene, it might change slightly, but this is just a web browser on a very reliable server up on, I think Pure Web handle this one, so I'm not quite sure what servers they use, but they take care of the back end on this one. And yeah, things like turning on fire, turning on TV, and you can then have animations in there. So I don't know how you guys are seeing this, but on my computer, it's very fast.
No, it's looking good, Erica. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it comes down to, obviously there's an importance on making sure that wherever you put it on the pixel streaming servers or what servers you use, there's an importance to make sure it has the graphical power that you need for the experience, but then also making sure that you're not running it on 3G, because it again can cause some latency issues. So yeah, but I think even that we're seeing it less and less, because most people have fairly good internet these days. And unless you're sort of on Mars or something, you're probably going to struggle to pixel stream stuff. So I know, Alan, you're going to have to not pixel stream from Mars, but we'll work on it.
Yeah. We'll figure it out. I did do a presentation last month on this thing, and I was streaming my my simulation, and it was actually doing okay, except for like, if I was like jumping from the cockpit to the the behind view. So there is some latency, in there, but most of it is tolerable.
So here's an interesting technique which we explored. So we wanted to have a scene with real-time ray tracing in it. I think it was just a simple house example that we explored this on. And what our tech geniuses managed to do, because what we found is if real-time ray tracing was on, unless you had a very good server, whenever you move around, like from the cockpit to the planet, the frame rate suddenly drops and it's having to process a lot of information in frames. You're able to actually turn off real-time ray tracing while there is movement. So if you're looking to go from scene to scene, what it's actually able to do is it turns real-time ray tracing off, so the scene, the frame rate suddenly shoots up as you're moving. So you don't lose that latency, but whenever you arrive at your destination, real-time ray tracing then goes back on. So you're actually able to turn it on and off. It really depends on the experience, but what we found is it allowed that transition between these kind of zooming out and moving to a different camera, moving to another position, run a lot smoother on a pixel stream instance. It's an interesting sort of tech workaround that we found, but that was because I don't think we were using a particularly good server. But yeah, it was a very cool little trick.
That's really cool. Sorry, I'm just reading some questions that just came in. Morgan's wondering, what's the best approach for making conceptual art for models assets for these types of simulations? He knows that it's complicated objects, materials, textures can be harder to ray trace. I think he's wondering basically like how he can basically, conceptually put things together and then also make them available for, some type of simulations, pretty fast and iterative process.
So, I mean, I think I'm understanding the question correctly. I mean, the idea that you want to be able to drop assets in that from a conceptual level, but they can't be too realistic or it'll drain the frame rate. So you want to sort of explore different ways to optimize the model so it works better. I mean, there's a couple of different approaches to that. There's optimization tools within the engine of HLODs, which can kind of automatically create level of details for different models. Which you can either freeze, so you're constantly seen with an LOD1 level quality, which can sometimes look like spaghetti soup or just like polygons, or you can get it to automatically switch from one to the other, depending if you're zoomed out or zoomed in, depending on the sort of cull distance that you want to create. So there are ways to work around it. There's no automatic way, but because I mean, I understand where you're coming from, because there's a lot of these assets that we can download that, there are 100,000 polygons for this tree. And you're like, well, I've got 100 trees in here, and the engine may not be able to run that in real time with great frame rate, depending on the laptop that you have. What we're seeing more of are assets that have built-in LODs. And this is what the Quicksilver library that you have access to free and all these assets from Twinmotion will have inbuilt, is this idea of LODs that will either be able, which will be custom controlled to either show one particular one, so you can explore a scene conceptually, or you can get it to automatically switch and program it around that. So I think that might look around what you were asking. I may have misunderstood it, but I hope that kind of gives some idea. But look at HLOD and see if that's kind of helpful in any way. Okay. It's actually a technique I used on my very first one whenever I did the Dubai Creek Harbor project, which was like it was like a kilometer by a kilometer by a kilometer up tower in Dubai that, we had trees and cars and people, and the only way we could view those things with all these complex assets was to LOD the hell out of them. So from a distance, you're looking at a tree that actually is just a stick with a blob on it. But you can't tell it from that distance because you're so far away. And as you got closer, that blob suddenly became less blobs or smaller blobs, and then suddenly became leaves. And then before you know it, you're up close to it going, that's really realistic. That's nice.
That's really cool. I wanted to ask you also, you mentioned, and I didn't even know this, or this wasn't even on our radar. Twinmotion, there's plans to make the Twinmotion assets or the entire projects come into Unreal?
So this is, I mean, it was always the kind of outward purpose of, looking to acquire and then acquiring Twinmotion was, we didn't want to create a segregation between tools. It perpetuates the issue that we always see, this kind of collaboration. I use this tool. Oh, you want to use it in that tool? Oh, unlucky, you can, or you're going to have to destroy it and then rebuild it. So the idea was always to create this connection. So two things are currently happening. First thing that's happening is that we're currently making it's not available yet, but it'll be coming up soon, is making the Twinmotion assets available on the asset library. So all your trees and your people and your cars and your cows, very important. All of these will be available on the Unreal Marketplace to be used in your Unreal projects. What's currently being developed and not available yet, but very soon will be I think we're working with betas and look to release that at some point, either at the end of the year or early next year, is the actual link between Twinmotion and Unreal. So you have created a project with cows and everything in it in Twinmotion, a field maybe, or a cow atop for scale. Or banana for scale is usually the famous one. And then what you can do is you export that out as a Twinmotion file, which Unreal can then read and translate. So that's where it's going. We're not there yet, but the idea is to try and make that transition as seamless as possible, because this is the thing that you see as being constantly annoying. You have these other tools where, as visualization artists, you spend a lot of time, even architects and engineers, we spend a lot of time in these other programs creating these great visual assets, and you're then limited with what you can do with them afterwards. You're like, oh, well, can we make this, can we make it do this, or can we use it for a digital twin? You're like, no, you have to use the digital twin software if you want to turn that into a digital twin, or you have to use the VR software if you want to create a VR experience. We want to be able to make non-dead end programs. We want to create a pipeline that allows people to, easy access from any stage of the design through to the really hard, complex stuff. So it just opens a lot of doors rather than shuts them. Unfortunately, things like Lumion and Enscape, at the moment they get to a certain point and you can't go any further with them. The output is limited by the outputs of the program. But whenever you have game engines, the output is limitless. So go nuts with it and do whatever you want with it and explore it in whichever way you want. And that's what we're excited about.
No, I think that's great. I mean, we, like I said, I get a lot of projects where they're mostly concerned about a visual image or a visual animation. But then once they see it, we get questions of, well, could you do this with it? Could you make it into an AR project? Could you make it into a VR project? Could you make it into some type of interaction where we're slicing through the model? I'm like, well, yeah, but it's a Twinmotion project. But now, so we mostly just stayed in Unreal. But now, sometimes these projects are a little easier to start up in Twinmotion to get that visual image,
Agreed.
that visual. But then, like you said, we can easily just port this over. So I'm really excited about that.
So am I. I mean, this is really where we'll see a major gear shift change, and the relationship between architects and engineers with sort of the kind of digital technology experts and the visualization experts. It'll just be it'll just be this much easier transition that will require, because whenever you import data from Revit or from 3D Studio, converts it into Twinmotion assets and essentially our Unreal assets, you will have to do less on the other end of it as well, on the Unreal side. So optimizing that pipeline and making it clear and easier, I can't wait to see what's going to come from it. So keep an eye on certain the channels and see what happens coming later this year. But it was always the outset with the Twinmotion was to create these possibilities. So I'm glad you're excited, because I'm excited. Is
Twinmotion, is that ray tracing enabled?
Not yet, no. So at the moment we're currently, there's a lot of things under development with Twinmotion. One of them was obviously whenever we acquired it, we wanted to sort of start inputting all these different assets that we had from Quicksilver, and sort of just upping the standard and quality to obviously what the Unreal ecosystem has. Ray tracing, I think, is on the cards down the line. I don't know when though, but at the moment, no.
That's on.
I know that's an interesting thing to a lot of people. So that'll be once we got a nice pipeline, we'll come back to that. We'll get there.
I got one more for you from the YouTube chat. I know Twinmotion has a built-in exporter for images and video clips, specifically the MPEG format. But the question is whether the Unreal Engine has that capability.
To quickly create okay, so yeah, to quickly create animations and video. I mean, renders and pictures, yes. There's a little button in the top of your viewfinder in Unreal where you can take very, very high quality screen grabs or shots of what you're currently looking at within the cameras. And then there is also using the sequencer tool. You're able to set up camera paths. Again, the big difference between Unreal and Twinmotion, which I have to state up front, is the simplicity of the UI. You know, Unreal is got very appealing UI in some essence compared to other gaming engines, but it's not Twinmotion. Twinmotion is so simple of, you know, this is what you do, camera, here's the path, clear as day, and you move into it. Unreal, of course, that it's got the same capabilities. If you look into the sequencer options, it'll allow you to add a camera, create positions and paths and focal points and depths of field. And then there's a button at the top of that, which is essentially make movie, and it exports it out as an MPEG-4 file, where it'll go again frame by frame, render it out, and then you have your movie. So yes, it's just not quite as upfront and hello as Twinmotion tends to be.
I just noticed this week y'all enabled EXR render passes in the sequencer now.
Oh, see. Oh, you reading the 426 thing before me.
Y'all gave me some good reading this week.
Second part of that question was whether Unreal has the capability to automatically generate your LODs or whether they need to be created manually ahead of time.
Nope, automatic creation. So there's in the kind of static mesh panel, there's an element of LOD where it will do as good a job as possible of creating LODs. You know, this is the whole point is, and what they've done to kind of help that is it asks you to categorize your model. You know, is it vegetation? Is it rocks? Is it a building? Is it a person? And what it does is it uses that kind of basis, and then you can kind of set the level of LOD that you really want to set, all the way down to kind of, you know, pixel soup, all the way up to the kind of high fidelity one. So there is a way to auto generate that. So no, you don't need to import assets and say, this is LOD4 and no, this is LOD3. I think in one of my previous talks, that was, that's actually how I did it in the past was I always imported my own LEDs only because it allowed me custom control over what was seen at each LOD level. You know, I knew exactly what I wanted to be visible and how it was viewed. When you use the automatic LOD, saves you a bunch of time, and they do a really good job of trying to figure out what you're trying to simplify, but it can sometimes simplify it in a way that is not ideal. So yes, it's available. Try it out. It's great. And it works for about 90% of things. But on the other side, you may want a little bit more control over it. So you can import your own ones.
That's awesome.
That's a good question.
Really, really fantastic.
I like these questions. They're good. Apart from the Mars ones, I feel like I can answer most of these. This is awesome.
Well, Alan's
a Mars question.
Yeah, you had to start with the hardest one too. Huh?
I know. I didn't think someone would come to me going, so I'm looking to create the red planet. I'm like, it's not architecture at all. What? I'll put you in touch with our space guy. We've got a good space guy.
All right.
I did play around with that planetary content example y'all have where it's the, you know, full planet, you know, you can put full planet, you know, sizes in there and let you zoom out. And, you know, I even made the physical moon out there, you know, so.
Oh, hello.
You see the atmosphere, you know, hitting the light and actually making eclipses, you know, photo accurately. So.
Did it help? Did I recommend something bad for the Mars project or did we?
No.
Oh, that's good.
I think you undersold it. I think you undersold
good. Thank goodness. I will definitely talk after because I'm interested.
If I had a comment, I would be like on the UI editor. You'll need to ramp that UI movement speed to be miles per second instead of just, you know, because it only goes to like, you know, a couple of kilometers a second.
So miles instead of kilometers, Daniel? Is that what you're
sorry, like hundreds of kilometers a second. Yeah.
Yeah, that is one of my problems when I'm dealing with a 5 kilometer by 5 kilometer map. It's very difficult to like zoom in and do stuff and then zoom out and see the whole picture too. But
yeah, and then when you go to a planetary scale, now you need a planetary scale of movement. So that'd be my only comment of like, no, I just can't get to the thing fast enough.
It does feel like it would take a while. Maybe set up static cameras before you leave, so you can quickly jump to those cameras.
Yeah, I set up a static object so that I could just select them and then zoom to those, but still, it's
I do love the idea you press the wrong button and you're then suddenly back at Earth and you're like, oh God, I've got to scroll for a year, damn it. And they're going, come on. So yeah, maybe find faster ways to work around that. There are ways. Spaceships.
It's also another thing of like the Cine Tracer stuff that we've started looking at, which is like the Unreal plugin for setting up cameras, like in a VFX production, realm.
Yeah.
A few of our friends, and we're gonna have a talk, I think in January, from one of the Mandalorian guys who set up some of the sets over there. So you guys can be looking on about that.
See, this is where things get a little bit cooler whenever you start to leave the architecture, engineering, construction industry and start talking about Star Wars and Mandalorian. People go, well,
we just borrow from the stuff from those guys.
I always argue.
You got the budgets to like R&D this stuff for 6 months, and then once you're done, let me know how you figured it out. Now I can implement it.
I often argue that that the AEC industry is like, we're the most important industry in all of these different ones. Games and movies. You're all cool and you'll get the likes for being Star Wars. And I'm like, damn it, Star Wars is great. But we create the buildings which you guys use in this. I mean, come on. I mean, the architecture and the kind of built environment is the backbone, but for all of it, we're the most important. We create spaces that people live in. No one's living in the Mandalorian. That's right.
Another aspect of it is that, when you look at the budgets, they talk about how much money was in sales of a particular video game or, the box office of a particular movie. But if you add up the total revenue of the architectural, engineering, and construction industry,
yeah,
game and films is just a tiny percentage of what it costs to build the new stadium or to build a high-rise office.
No, it's really interesting whenever you see the types of outputs that can come out from different industries. I mean, yeah, the cost of obviously production of Mandalorian is a lot less than obviously building buildings, but when you look at the kind of budgets that are, they're very limiting and very challenging sometimes within different industries, and architecture is just one of many. Where the budgets which people have in order to express these ideas, and showcase this stuff is often limiting, that, we can't build these amazing sort of LED screen walls to just sort of share a project. So we work with the tools that we have and get sort of the great output we can from it, which is, shows more in the importance of obviously making a lot of this stuff open source is, especially to the, I hate to say poverty stricken AEC, but, we're always looking for good ways to save money. And that's just one of them.
Yeah, I should have clarified the budget to actually design and build is huge. The budget to produce the visualization of what it's going to look like is even tinier.
Itty bitty living space.
Yeah, but it's completely different than what it used to be like 20 years ago when me and Lee started in this world. They were just like, well, yeah, I brought up the idea of like, well, we should do something in real time because y'all keep on wanting to see these changes. And they were like, well, that's a video game. We can't show $100 million clients a video game that, we hired an artist and now he made a video game that can shoot stuff like, but we can do other things.
Yeah, the architecture firm I first started working for back in 2004, they had tried to communicate the possibility of doing that. And, they used the Quake engine, which they had to model in Radiant, and they built a model of the architectural office in Radiant, and incredibly primitive tools, very low pixel density, and they showed it to the principals at the firm, and they were interested in it, but the fact that the visual quality just wasn't there because this was 2004, but always the first question was, well, can you can you put guns in it and shoot? And they were like, oh yeah, we just have that disabled right now. And as a matter of fact, that the architectural office that we worked in was our favorite level to play. So we're hopping over desks and jumping down the elevator shaft, and, doing all this crazy stuff. There was this giant atrium in the building that we could jump from one side of the atrium to the other. Yeah, great fun.
That's awesome. I love the ability that, the evolution even over a very short period of time, the how real things can look in these spaces. Clients are like, oh, we want to see what this building looks like. It's like, well, we can actually have you stand in it and see it in VR and almost like you're there. Like it's very terrifying on just how realistic these things are coming. And yeah, there's lots of developments in this, which is just going to make it even sort of more realistic. And so soon we won't be able to tell the difference between real life and, simulated life. And, it's going to be very exciting.
So Unreal 5's going to be ready next month, right?
Oh, it's coming tomorrow, mate. It's not. We're probably looking 2021 at some point, but there's no release date yet. But keep it.
You heard it here first, right?
I have it now. No. You'll hear about it whenever we know. This is the great thing I love is like they're like, listen, people are going to be asking you a lot of questions, and you know as much as they know. So that's the thing you share. Whenever we know, you'll know, and that's what we're excited about.
I appreciate you coming on today.
That's a good question from the YouTube chat.
It's
It's not a technical question of any kind. Is there a use case for Unreal Engine that you've always wanted to see but nobody's done yet?
Oh my goodness. That's a really good one.
You got to come up with a good answer for a good question like that.
I know, that's a lot of pressure. Damn.
You got to tread carefully too.
Well, here's the thing. I'd love to say yes, but
there's a suggestion that you need to build a one-to-one model of the Millennium Falcon in Unreal.
That's it. I've not seen this yet. The fun, and this sounds really lame, and I apologize in advance. Honestly, every time I think that I've seen the most innovative thing come out of the Unreal Engine, someone then sends me another link to a video, which is just doing the next best thing. And so already what I thought was unachievable is it's constantly being thrown at me. So my expectation is constantly being superseded by other people's stuff. So as imaginative and creative as I feel I could get, it's always being outdone. So unless, I'm going for, what I would love to see is a planet-sized Mars in Unreal. There you go. Get it built.
Right.
You'll make my dream
I was
come
just going to
true.
say that, earlier.
Well, architecture on Mars.
A whole other planet.
Architecture on Mars. There we go. That's what I want to see. Get to it, team. I believe in you all.
Well, you know what? I think that's a great note to kind of stop on. I think that's a challenge to everyone is to come up with that next thing that's going to wow David's socks off. Email it to him. Email it to Epic Mega Grants, so we can actually produce it. Guys, I know you're on LinkedIn. You're always posting on there. Is that a good place to reach out to you?
A great place to reach out to me, and we can connect on there. At the same time, we'll point you in the directions from there, and we'll help out. And really, what you just said a second ago, absolutely encourage. Have a look at the Epic Mega Grants. Have a look and have a think about some ways that it can be used. And please throw proposals in. We're more than encouraging for everyone. And it doesn't matter if you're a big firm or if you're an individual enthusiast. We welcome everyone to submit proposals. And every single proposal is reviewed by a team and considered. So it gets seen by someone. So please, do. It'll be great to see.
All right, David, thank you so much for being here.
Hopefully
now hopefully it's not too late for you over there.
No, I'm off to have dinner now, so I'm very excited.
Okay. Thanks a lot, guys, everyone. Thank you.